I don't know if you've ever heard the term Phrogger before. Most people haven't. It sounds strange, almost silly, like something you'd laugh off, but it isn't. It's the word used for people like me. People who secretly live inside someone else's home without them ever knowing. We crawl into attics, slip into basements, wedge ourselves into crawl spaces, and move through hidden passages most homeowners don't even realize exist. It's not glamorous, and it's never safe, but for me, it was survival. I usually know what I'm doing. I plan everything carefully. I watch the routines, map the exits, and memorize the blind spots. I don't take risks unless I'm certain I'll make it out clean. I've lived in suburban houses, in decaying farmsteads, even in a luxury cabin in the woods where no one visited for months at a time, and every time I left without a trace. No one ever knew I had been there, but this house was different. It was supposed to be easy. The property was huge, the neighbors were far, and the owners only came by on weekends. There was no signal out here, but I didn't mind. In fact, I liked the silence. At least, I thought I did. On my second night, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, not upstairs, not downstairs, but inside the walls, inside the same hollow spaces where I was hiding. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one living in that house. And if you ever find yourself hearing noises where there shouldn't be any, don't explain them away. Don't wait. Don't convince yourself it's nothing. Leave, because I should have. I haven't told anyone this before. Not the police, not my family, not even the people I used to run with. I don't think they'd believe me, and honestly, I don't think I'd be safe if they did. So, I'm telling you. You feel like someone who might understand, someone who's seen strange things, or at least someone who won't laugh when I say the kind of words that get most people locked away. I just need someone to listen. That's it. I don't need advice, and I don't need pity. I need someone to hear the words I've carried around. Words that have poisoned my sleep and made every night feel like I'm still inside those walls. It's been weeks, maybe months, since I left that house. But when the lights go out and I try to close my eyes, I still hear it. The footsteps, the scratching, the breathing that wasn't mine. You know, people always assume being a Phrogger is just about hiding, about eating scraps from refrigerators and slipping around like a shadow when the homeowners leave. They don't realize it's mostly about listening. You become obsessed with every sound, every creak, every faint shift in the floorboards above your head, because that's how you survive by hearing before you're seen. That's why I noticed it so quickly. I'd only been in that house for 2 nights when I realized something was wrong. It wasn't just the size of the place or the silence that pressed down on me like a weight. It wasn't just the fact that there was no signal, no way to call out, no lifeline. It was the noises, the creepy noises that didn't belong, the ones that came when the owners weren't there, the ones that came from the walls themselves. You might be thinking, maybe it was animals. Mice, raccoons, the usual pests that crawl their way into attics and basements of houses, left alone too long. I thought that too, at first. But animals don't whisper, they don't laugh, and they don't move furniture when no one is looking. I need you to promise me something before I go any further. Promise me you won't try to find it. Don't go searching for this place. Don't look up the address or hunt down the family that owns it. Don't tell yourself that maybe you could last longer than I did, because whatever's in that house, it isn't interested in who you are or what you want. It's only interested in keeping you there, and I think it wanted me to stay forever. When I first broke in, I thought I'd hit the jackpot, a sprawling cabin in the woods, more like a lodge, really. Tucked away on a piece of land so deep into the trees, it almost swallowed itself. From the outside, it looked like the kind of place families rented for the summer, a place for laughter and games and bonfires. But when I stepped inside, it felt wrong. Not dirty, not abandoned, just wrong. Like the air had been exhaled once and never drawn back in. The first night was quiet enough. I slept in one of the smaller rooms, tucked behind an old dresser I could nudge out of the way if I needed to. I stayed still, listened. I counted my breaths until dawn, and for a while, I almost convinced myself it would be fine, that I'd stay a few weeks, eat from the pantry, and leave without ever being noticed. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But on the second night, I woke to the sound of something dragging a chair across the floor in the living room. Slow, scraping, deliberate. I froze, waiting for the sound to stop. When it finally did, I told myself it had to be my imagination. The house is shifting, old wood groaning. Except the chair wasn't where I'd last seen it in the morning. I know I sound paranoid, but when you live the way I do, paranoia is survival. If something feels off, you don't dismiss it. You don't rationalize it. You listen. You pay attention. Because the moment you let your guard down is the moment you're caught, or worse. That's what makes this harder to explain. Because even though I've built my life on being careful, even though I've trained myself to never miss a sound, I stayed. I should have left after that second night. I should have run into the woods and never looked back. But I didn't, and that's why I'm here, whispering this to you now. That's why I haven't slept right in weeks. That's why, when I close my eyes, I see the inside of that cabin in the woods. I see the dark corners where something waits. I hear the unexplained presence breathing alongside me, and I know that I'm lucky to have left it all. So if you're listening, if you've ever wondered what it would be like to live inside someone else's house, to sleep in their walls and hide in their shadows, hear me when I tell you this. Some houses aren't just shelters. Some houses keep, and the one I found, it still wants me back. You'd think after everything I've told you so far, I would have gotten out of there right away. But the truth is, I didn't. And I think part of me didn't want to, at least not yet. That cabin in the woods had a strange pull to it, like it was built to keep you curious, built to make you linger even when every instinct screamed at you to leave. From the outside, it looked like something straight out of a faded postcard, a big A-frame structure with dark, weathered wood that seemed almost black under the trees. The roof stretched down at sharp angles, and the windows were long and thin, like watching eyes. Moss grew thick along the stones of the chimney, and the porch sagged slightly, as though the house itself was tired of standing after all these years. It wasn't crumbling, though. That was the strange part. It wasn't abandoned or falling apart. It looked preserved, kept, like someone, or something, made sure it would never fade completely. The deeper you walked around the property, the more you realized how alone it was. No other houses, no power lines, no roads except the dirt trail that wound back into the trees like a vein disappearing under skin. I'd been in remote places before, but this one was different. The silence wasn't peaceful. It wasn't the kind of quiet that makes you feel safe. It was the kind that presses in on you, the kind that makes you realize if you scream, no one will hear it. And the silence wasn't complete. Every so often, I'd catch something faint, a snap of a branch where nothing moved, a whisper of leaves when there was no wind. I told myself it was animals, the forest, doing what forests do. But when I listened harder, it didn't sound like that. It sounded closer, a little too close. I didn't know much about the cabin's history, not then, but I'd heard things. Everyone in this line of work hears things. You learn where to hide and where not to. You trade stories with others, warnings wrapped in half-truths. And I'd heard about a place out in the woods where people went missing. Not tourists, not hikers, but people like me. People who lived in the shadows of other people's homes. The story went that if you stayed too long, the house made you part of it. No one could explain what that meant exactly. They just said you wouldn't come back out the same. I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was just a scare tactic, a way to keep Phroggers away from prime territory. But when I stood in that cabin for the first time, The rumors didn't feel like stories anymore. They felt like warnings I hadn't listened to. Inside, the house was bigger than it looked from the outside. The main room stretched high, beams arching like ribs overhead. Dust should have covered everything, but it didn't. The furniture was old, but not rotten. The rugs worn, but not torn. It was like the house refused to age. Like it was holding on to something long after it should have let go. And then there were the clocks. Every room had one. Big ones, little ones, some built into the walls, some perched on mantles. They ticked when I first arrived. I remember standing there, listening to that overlapping rhythm, 1,000 tiny heartbeats scattered through the cabin. But by the second night, they'd all stopped. Every single one, frozen at different times. The silence they left behind was worse than the ticking, because when you've been living in the walls, when you know every pattern of sound a house makes, silence doesn't mean peace. It means something else is listening. Even the birds seemed to know better. During the day, I'd catch faint calls at the edge of the property, but never close. It was like the trees around the cabin were a boundary no living thing wanted to cross. I didn't see a single crow, not one sparrow, not even a squirrel climbing the pines that brushed the roof. The house sat in its own pocket of stillness, untouched. Avoided, but the reflections, that was the detail that finally made me admit something was wrong. It started with the bathroom mirror. I brushed past it one night and froze. For a second, I thought I'd caught someone standing behind me. But when I turned, the hallway was empty. When I looked back, my reflection wasn't empty at all. It was smiling. My mouth was shut, my face dead still, but in the glass, I was grinning wide enough to hurt. And then, as if nothing had happened, the reflection caught up, moving with me again. I didn't look in that mirror anymore. You might think I'm making this sound worse than it was. That maybe my sleepless nights were catching up to me, making me see things. I wondered that too. But you have to understand, I know the difference between imagination and instinct. Imagination makes you scared. Instinct makes you survive. And my instincts told me that house was alive. Sometimes, when I pressed my ear to the wall, I swore I could hear it breathing, slow, patient, waiting. I told myself I'd leave, that I'd pack up what little I had and slip out before dawn. But then the sun would rise, and the house would look almost normal again, harmless, almost welcoming. And I'd think, one more night, just one more night. That's how it gets you. And that's why I need you to really hear this. I know the cabin in the woods sounds like just another creepy story, just another isolated house with no signal, just another place people whisper about around fires. But I lived there. I slept on its walls. I heard the things it whispered back, and I promise you nothing about that place was empty. I should have left after the mirror. I told myself I would. But the house knew how to keep me there. It lulled me during the day, letting the sunlight filter through the long windows, soft and golden, like any other cabin in the woods. It made me think maybe I'd imagined everything, maybe sleepless nights and an overactive mind were to blame. But at night, the silence pressed back in, and that's when things began to move. It started small, a faint knock from inside the walls. At first, I thought it was wood settling, or maybe a bird trapped somewhere in the rafters, but the knocks didn't sound random. They came in sets, 3 slow taps, a pause, then 3 again, like someone testing, someone trying to be heard. I listened to those knocks for hours. Sometimes they came from the far side of the house, sometimes directly behind me. Once, I woke to hear them just above my headboard, as though something was crawling across the ceiling, rapping its knuckles against the beams. Then the doors started opening. I'd close them, lock them, even wedge furniture in front of them. But sometime after midnight, I'd hear the creak of hinges and the soft scrape of wood against the floor. When I checked, the door would be wide open, as though inviting me out into the dark hall. Once, I sat by the door, with my eyes open, waiting. I watched the handle turn by itself, slowly, like a hand on the other side was twisting it. I told myself not to move, not to breathe, but the door still opened, slow as a yawn, until the hall beyond was exposed. No one stood there, but I swear I saw shadows stretching long and thin, reaching across the floor toward me. Sleep became impossible. The house didn't let me. Every time I drifted, something pulled me back awake. I'd hear whispers just under the edge of my dreams. Soft, low voices, speaking in rhythms that matched the knocking. I could never make out the words, not fully, but they seemed to answer my thoughts. If I dreamed of leaving, the whispers would laugh. If I dreamed of running, they'd say, "Don't bother." When I woke, the whispers would cut off. But the echo of them stayed in my head, like a tune you can't forget. The strangest part was how the house seemed to rearrange itself while I wasn't looking. I'd leave the kitchen in order, plates stacked, chairs tucked under the table. In the morning, the chairs would be pulled out, sometimes upside down. Once, every cabinet stood open, doors gaping like mouths. I remember one night in particular, I'd hidden myself in the crawl space above the main room, a place where I thought I'd be safe, where the house couldn't find me. It was narrow, filled with insulation and dust, the kind of place where you can barely turn your head without scraping against wood. I was lying there, staring at the beams, when I heard it again, the knocking. Only this time, it came from directly under me. Slow, steady, the same 3-beat rhythm. I pressed my ear to the floorboard, and I swear I heard breathing. Not like a person, not fast or shallow. It was deep, like the cabin itself was inhaling, and with every exhale, the dust around me stirred, as though the whole house was alive and I was in its chest. I scrambled out of that crawl space, but when I dropped down into the main room, the furniture had moved again. The chairs were stacked in the center of the room, legs tangled like a sculpture, and on the wall above them, someone had written something in the dust. Just one word: stay. I didn't write it. I don't even think it was written with a finger. The letters were too sharp, too precise, carved as though something with claws had traced them. I told myself it was a trick. My mind, my exhaustion, my fear. But the next night proved me wrong. I'd fallen asleep, sitting upright against the wall, clutching a kitchen knife I'd found in the drawer. When I woke, the knife was gone. For a moment I thought I'd dropped it, but then I saw it stuck into the wood of the door across the room, perfectly straight, buried deep, and the blade was pointing at me. I didn't hear anyone enter. I didn't feel anyone take it from my hand, but someone or something had moved it while I slept. That's when the dreams became worse. I stopped having my own. Instead, I dreamed of the house. Always the same hallway, endless, lined with doors that opened on their own. Behind each door, I'd hear something different, crying, scratching, footsteps pacing back and forth. But the worst were the voices. They'd call my name, soft at first, then louder, until the sound filled the dream. And when I woke, the voices wouldn't stop. They followed me into the waking world, whispering from corners, from the dark spaces between furniture, from the attic above. I tried to leave then. I swear I tried. I packed my things, slung my bag over my shoulder, and stepped out onto the porch. But when I looked down the dirt road that had brought me there, I froze. It wasn't the same road anymore. It bent where it hadn't before, curving deeper into the woods. The trees looked thicker, darker, pressing in closer. I walked anyway. 10 minutes, 20, maybe an hour. But the path only led me back to the cabin. No matter which way I turned, I'd end up at the porch again. The forest bent space around it, trapping me in its circle. That was when I understood what people meant when they said the cabin kept you. It wasn't about temptation. It wasn't about curiosity. It was literal. The house wouldn't let me go. After that, I stopped pretending I could fight it. I stayed inside. I listened to the knocks, the whispers, the creak of doors opening in the dark. I started counting the sounds, mapping them in my head, like patterns. 3 knocks, 2 whispers, a door creak. 3 knocks, a laugh, silence, over and over. And then came the night, when the house decided to speak back. I was half asleep when I heard my own voice. Not in a dream out loud. From the next room. It was calling my name, the same way I'd said it to myself 1,000 times in thought. I crept to the doorway, every muscle trembling, and there, in the dark kitchen, I heard it again, my voice, whispering, repeating things I'd said to myself in my head, things I hadn't spoken out loud. It was using me against myself, and when I finally forced myself to look into the dark, I saw something shift, not a full shape, not a body, just movement, a ripple of shadow bending around the edges of the cabinets, like something too big to fit in the room, was trying to press itself into human form. I ran back into the main room and slammed the door, but the knocking started again, furious this time. Not 3 taps anymore, dozens, a chorus of hands slamming against the walls, against the doors, against the floor beneath me. The whole cabin vibrated with it, rattling like a drum, and over it all, I heard the word again, drawn out in a voice that sounded half like mine and half like something else entirely. Stay. I don't know if I should tell you this part. It feels like the kind of thing that's safer left buried. But maybe you already sense it, that there's something about this place that isn't just wrong, it's intentional. Like it was made to hold something, to keep it breathing. The first clue came from the floorboards. I wasn't looking for anything, not really. I was just pacing one night, too restless to sleep, when I noticed one plank sounded different beneath my feet. Hollow. I pressed my weight on it, felt it shift, and after a while, I pried it up. Beneath the board, I found a space about the size of a shoebox. Inside was a journal, old leather, cracked, the kind that flakes at your touch. The pages were yellow, some sticking together from damp, but the writing was still there, ink scrawled in frantic strokes, lines pressed so hard they almost tore the paper. At first, I thought it belonged to the previous owner, but the more I read, the more I realized this book had been here far longer than I'd guessed. The dates were faded, written in an old style of script, 1920s, maybe earlier. The writer spoke of the same things I'd been hearing, knocks in the walls, doors opening on their own, whispers that stole sleep. But there was more. He wrote that the cabin fed, that it needed people inside it to keep breathing. Without someone in the rooms, the noises grew violent. The forest outside worked to pull travelers back. He claimed the house wasn't just shelter, it was a body with hunger. One line stuck with me, circled again and again in thick, desperate ink. The cabin is not haunted. The cabin is haunted. I stopped reading after that, or maybe I couldn't make myself go further. The words were too close to what I'd been living, too precise. Like the journal had been waiting for me to find it, but I didn't leave it there. I kept turning pages, trembling as I read about what came after. The writer spoke of something ancient, not a ghost, not exactly. He called it the breath under the boards. He said it lived in the spaces of the house, between wood and stone, in the cracks where light couldn't reach. It watched him in reflections. It mimicked his voice. It turned his dreams into its own language. And then came the warning, scrawled in jagged lines across nearly half a page. If you hear it, say your name, do not answer. If you see yourself where you should not be, do not approach. Above all, stay inside. Do not let it draw you into the trees. The cabin is the safer cage. The words made my blood run cold, because I had heard my name, because I had seen shadows in the glass, stretching in ways they shouldn't, because, more than once, I had thought I glimpsed myself standing in the hallway, just at the edge of sight. That was when I started to notice other things, things I'd been ignoring. Scratches carved low into the walls, not from animals but from fingernails. dozens of them, some deep enough to splinter the wood. A cluster of markings on the doorframe like tally marks, counting. What? Days? Victims? And in the kitchen, when I wiped away the dust from the cabinets, I found words etched faintly into the wood, not by knife, by heat, burned in, like someone pressed metal to it. I had to lean close to make them out. They weren't in English. I didn't recognize the language, but just looking at them made my skin prickle, like I'd seen them before in some nightmare I couldn't remember. That night, I tried to sleep, but the house wasn't quiet. It never is. Only this time, the whispers weren't just sounds, they were words. Clearer than they'd ever been. They said the same things the journal had warned me about. They said my name, over and over, sometimes in my voice, sometimes in others, a chorus of stolen tones bleeding through the walls. And then came the mirror. I hadn't dared look into it since that first night, but something drew me back. I don't even remember walking toward it, only finding myself standing there, candlelight flickering against the glass. At first, I saw nothing but my reflection, pale, sleepless, hollow. But as I leaned closer, the glass rippled, not like water, more like breath fogging from the inside. And then it smiled. I hadn't. My mouth was still, lips pressed tight. But the version of me in the glass grinned wide, teeth too sharp, stretching longer than they should. My own reflection leaned forward, pressing its forehead to the other side of the glass. Watching me with hunger, I staggered back, but not before I heard it. My voice, from the mirror, whispering one word, stay. That was when I knew the journal wasn't just warning me. It was documenting the same cycle, over and over. The house takes people. It bends itself around them, feeds on their fear, learns their voices, wears their faces. It doesn't let them go until it has hollowed them out completely. And here's the part. I haven't told anyone the part I'm not sure I should tell you. I think the man who wrote that journal never left. I think he's still here. Not alive, not in the way you'd think, but in the voices, in the knocks, in the shape that sometimes brushes past me in the corner of my vision. The house kept him, folded him into itself, made him part of its breath. Sometimes, when the whispers are clearest, I think I can hear him, begging, not to be saved, but to be forgotten. I should have run the moment I found that journal. But the truth is, there's nowhere to run, and the cabin knows I know. It lets me uncover just enough to understand what I'm trapped inside of. It wants me to see. It wants me to tell it, to spread it, so someone else will find it when I'm gone, because that's what it feeds on. Not just fear, not just the people who stumble inside. It feeds on memory, on stories, on the act of keeping it alive in words. The man who left the journal gave it his, and now, here I am, giving it mine, and maybe, just maybe, I'm giving it yours too. I don't remember deciding to leave. I only remember standing in the cabin's front room, clutching the journal in one hand and my car keys in the other, whispering to myself like a prayer, just get out, just get out, just get out. The house was breathing around me, boards creaking in long drawn-out sighs that seemed to echo in my chest. Every instinct screamed that if I stayed one more night, I wouldn't walk out at all. The air outside was sharp with cold, carrying the smell of pine and wet soil. For the first time since I'd arrived, the forest seemed alive with movement. Branches trembling though there was no wind, shadows lurching between the trees like something just out of sight. My flashlight barely cut through it. I told myself it was just nerves, just exhaustion. But every crunch of leaves under my boots felt followed by another set of footsteps, half a beat behind mine. I should have reached the road in 15 minutes, 20 at most. But when I checked my watch, nearly an hour had passed, and the forest hadn't thinned. The path I'd marked with ribbons was gone. Every turn led back into the same stretch of trees, the same heavy silence broken only by the occasional rustle in the undergrowth. I tried to calm myself, to breathe slowly, but panic burned in my throat. The journal's words gnawed at me. The forest bends to keep you. The cabin is the safer cage. I pushed on anyway, clutching the flashlight until my knuckles hurt. That's when I saw it. Through the trees, maybe 50 yards ahead, light. Warm, flickering, like the glow of a window. My chest surged with relief. I thought I'd found another house, another person, anything to prove I wasn't alone. I stumbled toward it, half-running branches, snapping against my arms. But when I broke into the clearing, my stomach dropped. It was the cabin. My cabin, the same sagging porch, the same cracked shutters. Only this time, the door was wide open, a thin orange light spilling out, as if it had been waiting for me to circle back. My legs froze beneath me. I should have screamed, but all I could do was stand there, trembling, as the light from inside flickered against the trees like a heartbeat. I tried again. I don't know how many times. Hours blurred into each other as I walked, ran, stumbled, always ending where I began. The forest wasn't just deep. It was folding around me, looping me back, pulling me closer. By the third time I returned to the cabin, my mind felt cracked open, bleeding, confusion. By the fifth, I wasn't sure if I'd ever left at all. And the worst part, each time I came back, the cabin was different. The second time, the windows were already lit, though I hadn't left a lamp burning. The third time, I heard faint humming from inside, a low, tuneless murmur in my own voice. The fourth, the reflection in the window wasn't waiting for me. It was pacing, impatient, smiling wider every time I glanced up. I didn't try a sixth time. I don't know if I gave up, or if the house decided I was ready. My body felt heavy leaden as I climbed the steps and crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was warm, too warm, like being swallowed whole. The lights flickered once, then steadied, casting shadows along the walls that didn't quite match mine, and in the quiet, I finally understood what the journal meant. There is no escaping. The forest, the cabin, the voices are all the same thing. They breathe together. They pull you in, wear you down, until the thought of leaving feels impossible. Not because you can't, but because some part of you no longer wants to. I sat at the table. The journal opened before me, and listened. The whispers weren't outside anymore. They weren't on the walls. They were in my head, curling soft and low, almost gentle. My name, over and over, spoken in tones that sounded like comfort. They told me I was safe here, that I belonged, that the house had been waiting for me, just as it had waited for him before, and the others before that. And maybe it's true. Maybe that's the only truth left. I feel the board shift beneath my feet. The walls tighten like lungs filling, the faint pulse that runs through the air. The cabin isn't a prison. It's a body that needs me to keep breathing. I could still try, I suppose. I could take the keys, the flashlight, one more attempt into the trees. But the thought barely tempts me now. My reflection in the window is smiling again, and I think it's right. So if you're listening, if you've followed me this far, don't come looking. Don't try to find the cabin, because if you do, you'll never leave either. You'll walk the same circles, hear the same whispers, see the same smile waiting in the glass. And if, one day, you wake to the sound of breathing in your walls, you'll know it's already too late. The cabin doesn't need to be in the woods to reach you. It only needs you to remember. I haven't really slept since that night. Not the way I used to, anyway. Sleep now feels like a shallow pool I wade into, never daring to let myself sink beneath the surface. And even when I drift off, the dreams are thin, frayed things. I always wake before the shadows finish moving, before the voice finishes speaking my name. But the feeling lingers. The house lingers, like it never let me go at all. Sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I swear I can hear the boards creak. Not the floor of my apartment, not the normal sounds of settling wood. I mean the cabin, the long drawn-out exhale of it, stretching across the silence, as if it followed me here. and when I glance at the window, I can almost see the faintest shimmer of light flickering on the glass. That same warm glow that drew me back, again and again. You probably think I'm exaggerating. I wouldn't blame you. That's part of why I'm telling you this, because I need someone else to carry a piece of it, even if it's only through my words. Maybe if I say it out loud enough times, I'll believe I'm not alone in remembering. Maybe I'll believe I didn't imagine the forest folding in on itself, or the reflection pacing without me, smiling wider every time. But then again, maybe that's the danger. Maybe just by listening, you're already too close. The journal warned about memory, about the house being more than walls and wood. It said the cabin needed to be remembered, spoken about, called into existence again and again. That's how it survives. That's how it finds you. I told myself I'd never go back, and yet sometimes I catch myself tracing the name of the town into the corner of a notebook, or looking up satellite maps of the forest, as if some part of me is still trying to locate it. As if the house planted something in me, a seed that keeps tugging me closer, even when I want nothing more than to run. I think that's the cruelest part. It doesn't just keep you physically. It keeps you mentally, quietly, patiently, until you stop trying to leave at all. I'm not the same person I was before. I feel quieter now, thinner, like something hollowed me out and left just enough to walk around with. People at work say I seem distracted or tired. They laugh and tell me to get more sleep. But if they knew what I saw in those woods, if they felt what it was like to stand in front of your own reflection and see it smiling at you like a stranger, they wouldn't laugh. They'd understand. So here's the truth. The part I don't want to admit but can't stop circling back to. I think the cabin is still with me. Not in the obvious ways. Not in a set of keys or a map or a photograph, but in the silence, on the way the lights in my apartment flicker for just a second too long, on the way I sometimes wake to find my chair pulled a few feet closer to the window, though I live alone, in the way I hear my name, whispered just as I'm drifting off, soft and patient and unbearably kind. And if it's with me, then maybe, by telling you this, it's with you now too. That's the part I'm scared of, the possibility that by speaking it aloud, I've carried it across, slipped it into your room tonight. Sitting in the quiet with you, I don't know if that's how it works. I don't know if the house needs you to see it, or if remembering me is enough. All I know is that I can feel it when someone listens. The walls lean closer. The air shifts, and in some far corner of my vision, the glow of a window waits. So please, if you ever find that place, don't go inside. Don't even step onto the porch. Don't think you're stronger than I was. Burn it if you can, though I doubt fire will touch it. Just don't stay. Don't let the cabin remember your name the way it remembers mine, because once it does, you'll never really leave. You know, maybe that's why I'm really talking to you right now. Not just to confess, not just to unburden myself, but to ask you something. Have you ever felt it too? That subtle shift in the air when you're supposed to be alone. The quiet scrape of something moving just out of sight. Or the weight of a presence pressing down on your chest at night, as if something's watching you sleep. I read stories, sometimes little fragments online from people who swear they've seen things they can't explain, and I don't laugh anymore. I believe them. Every single one. Because I know what it feels like to sound crazy when you're only trying to survive the truth. So, if you've felt something like this, tell me. Write it down. Share it here. Maybe it'll help you, the way speaking helped me. Maybe it'll prove we're not alone in carrying these things. And if you've never felt it, if you think this is just a story, just another strange confession whispered into the dark, then good. Keep it that way. Don't go looking for places that don't want to be found. Don't stand too long at the edge of a forest at night. Don't lean too close to your own reflection. I'll be here, listening. I always am. Just whatever you do, don't listen to the next story alone.